So this is a recording we use to put back up on the organizational development website. I think you've seen the link of this course page. We're developing some things, putting some resources on there. And I'm also looking for volunteers if you'd like, and we can do this a little later if nobody's ready to step up, but looking for volunteers for our role play a little later. And it's just a quick little 5-minute thing, but if you're willing to perform, no pressure. Let me know that, and I did send the attachments out to everybody who has registered, so feel free to jump in the chat and volunteer, or we'll work through it another way. We've got a couple different options. So welcome, everyone. I think you should all be settled, and hopefully, I want to just check in the chat, asking people if they can hear me, just to double check that's going to work. So this is Strategies for Effective Meetings, What Works for You. I am Kim Fleming, Professional Development Specialist here with Extension Administration. I'm part of the Organizational Development and Accountability team. And this is kind of a basic Strategies for Effective Meetings webinar. It's got some hints that probably many of you are very familiar with, but I do want to work to draw out some of your tips and tricks. We've done some of the research, pulled down some of the resources, a lot of them through the Strengthening Extension Advisory Committees. I'm going to hit that mute here. And if you do want to talk to us, I'll have you jump right into the chat box. But I do want to invite participation today, and as I said, we have a little role play to get through too. But we've done some research, and we've pulled on some resources so we can just think about refreshing our skills with effective meetings. And there are effective ways to have meetings. Some people feel like their meetings can be a waste of time, and they can if not done properly, but they can also be very effective. So we're going to get rolling with this now. For those of you who might be new to WebEx, I'm not sure if anybody is. I think I know a lot of your names and appreciate you being on. There is a chat box there, so if you want to send to, you may send to all participants and write a note. If you prefer just to write to me, you also can send to the host, and I won't have to use your names if you have a question that you don't want to share. But I do want to have people feel very open and able to share and talk and ask questions. There are no dumb questions, and I truly believe that. So we're recording this. We're going to move on to what our purpose is for today. So our purpose is an overview. The overview for the webinar today is to explore ways to best prepare for a good meeting start. We're going to talk about atmosphere participation and also for getting results, making a meeting very effective. And then we're going to look at some of the tools, and as I mentioned, the Strengthening Extension Advisory Leaders Curriculum. All of these are listed. The resources that we've used are listed on the last page in the references, so you can go back and take a look at them if you haven't had a chance to do that already. We also put a link on our course page so you can find the Strengthening Extension Advisory Leaders Curriculum. This is actually a group that I work with. It's a national group that was pulling together curriculum around boards, which are often called advisory leaders in other states, especially in the southern states, but think board of directors, think advisory committees for us, some of our program committees. So that's where some of that resources came from, and these are specifically extension groups. And then we're going to consider ways to work with conflict causers and meeting killers. Just something to think about. Sometimes we do work with some we often work with very productive volunteers and staff, but occasionally in some meetings you've got some people that aren't always forwarding the cause, and we want to be sure that we're primed to expect those challenges and meet up with them. So thanks for joining. So that's the purpose of today. Is there anything, and we'll look at the agenda, and I want you to take a look at this also. The plan is we're going to talk about why we actually have meetings. We're going to talk about what makes meetings effective. So some of the strategies, some of the tools, talk about those meeting challenges, and then we're going to talk about wrapping up a meeting and evaluating by actually doing that. So Mary's saying unable to hear from Mary. So we do have you muted. If you need to talk, you can put that right in the chat box, Mary. Is there something I need to do? Or Mary, maybe you're not able to hear me. Let me know that. So we'll be wrapping up, and then we're going to adjourn. And Mary, I'm looking for your note there if you're still having challenges. Let me write a quick note to Mary. So I'm going to encourage people to call in if they're having any sound, call in on the phone if they're having sound issues. So if you'd like to chat in the chat box, let me know if there's something else you'd like to cover. That's pretty basic, but part of a good meeting is taking a look at the agenda and making sure people have a chance to share some input. And hopefully everyone can hear. Just called in on the phone. Very good. Okay, so we're going to forward on and move right along. So why do we have meetings? So meetings, there really is a purpose for them. And those, whether it's a face-to-face meeting or a meeting over WebEx, meetings help to develop that group identity, to get groups, and build those relationships, to get groups working together well. Also help to define a shared vision and a purpose, so groups, the guide groups to reach outcomes. This is kind of the process there. So we're building the relationships, working on process with a group. How can we work together the best way? And meetings help to get everybody in the same room to do that, or in the same virtual room. And they also help to develop special projects, tasks, and activities. So we really have meetings to get things done, and hopefully that's why you're having your meetings also. So the relationship, the process, the results are dimensions of a successful meeting. One of the articles that's in our references is from the Journal of Extension, talks about facilitation and the road to effective meetings. There's a lot more meat in that activity, but just to think about that triangle purpose with the process, with the results, and with the relationships. So there really is a value in meetings, and encourage you to think about that as we go through some of this. Meetings also act as a catalyst for measuring progress towards tasks, for sharing ideas, for that group decision making when we're all in the same room, and also for group recognition. So many important features in a meeting, and I'll invite you, if you'd like to add anything to the purpose of a meeting that I might be missing here on this list. So do feel free to jump right in there. Add something right to the chat to all participants. Why do you have a meeting? So I'll move forward with elements of an effective meeting. We definitely want to think about the results that we want. We want to be focused on what we're going to get through. We want meetings, we want meetings to be motivational. And I think when we think about that results focused again, Holly, yes, we want to keep people keep on those tasks. Sometimes if we're all working independently, it's we're juggling many other things. A meeting will help you say, I need to move forward on this, need to have something done by the next meeting. So we definitely do want to have results and be accountable. So meetings can also be very motivational. So the right leader can definitely guide a group into getting things done, and also building relationships and respect for each other. And also an effective meeting effectively uses a participant's time. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. If meetings aren't effective, they're not going to motivate people to come back, whether it's a value volunteered or even a paid colleague. People aren't going to show up if they feel like it's not worth their time. And keep up to date with the team's highlights. So updates are another thing which may be built in. You wouldn't want to have a meeting just for that, but also to know what the rest of the team is going on, so we're well connected and can focus our tasks and what we want to get done based on what the rest of the team is doing. So thank you for that. So 6 golden rules of meeting management. We did a lot of research on this, and we actually put this together originally in 2011. I had a student working here, Emily Knight, so I want to give her credit for that. But we've updated it since with some newer articles. You'll see some Harvard Business Review articles that are in the references that weren't there before. And as you go through this, these 6 points seem to be that were in the 6 golden rules for meeting management at govleaders.org. Seem to be the theme that was running through everything. And I'm sure as you think about this, think about some other things you might add, but here are some of the 6 keys. So you definitely want to, running an effective meeting is about being considerate of others. All other golden rules flow from this principle. So to run the kind of meeting that you definitely want to attend. You're going to distribute the agenda, background information ahead of time. This is pretty basic things. You don't want people to arrive without knowing why they're there. In fact, you shouldn't really go to a meeting, and I've heard that some people require this if they haven't seen the agenda or haven't seen what the purpose of the meeting is. Always ask. Feel free to ask. It's okay. You can do that very respectfully, saying, I just want to make sure I'm prepared. What's going on with the meeting? What can I bring to that? Now, if it's a regular staff meeting or a regular ongoing meeting, then you'll probably know what the purpose is. But I think it's good to, as meeting minders, as effective educators and staff in Cornell Cooperative Extension, you want to ask for that and make sure that you're prepared for the meeting so you can contribute. Also, you want to start on time and end on time, and you don't want to take longer than you have to accomplish the meeting objective. So definitely sticking to the schedule. Again, that's respecting people's time and making things effective. You want to stay on topic. It's really important that you are taking some time to build those relationships or building in some time after the meeting, before the meeting, to add in that social component. But when you're there for the meeting, you want to make sure people have a chance to really get focused, get things done, and then move on to the other things. Of course, you're going to want to build in some humor, build in some stories to make that all to really bring points home. But overall, you want to stay on topic. So then number 5 is finding a balance between the good communication and productive use of time. So don't hold meetings more often than you need to. Really decide, can I send an email report? Can our team keep in touch by sending emails? Of course, email can be very overwhelming, and not everybody will pick up and read that. So team highlights are good in a meeting, but also what kind of reports can we send so that we can get to the task at hand and make sure that we are results focused. And then when we wrap up meetings, the organizer is definitely responsible for summarizing what needs to be done and actually making those assignments. So be sure you have some action points when you come out of that meeting. That wraps up the meeting with the next steps and the assignments. And participants, too, have responsibility to follow the rules and to help facilitate an effective meeting. When we go through the role play a little later, we'll talk about how participants can be useful. If you're not a chair, how you can actually help to also move the meeting along. Let me know if you have questions or want to add anything to those 6 golden rules of meeting management. We'll get into a little more detail as we go along, but you may have some things you want to add to that, so feel free to do that. So when we talk about preparing for the meeting, we're going to think about clarifying the purpose of the meeting and make sure you have that in writing, actually send that out. We're going to give the background information to prepare the members, so make sure, again, people are here to do their best thinking. They've maybe mulled over a topic, so they maybe needed a chance to do some research. And also people may come to the meeting with some data. So if each of your members have a purpose for being there at that meeting, make sure they're prepared so that they can you get us the numbers on the last quarter who participated in programs in cooperative extension so we can make decisions on how we might move forward. So be sure that your participants know what the challenge we're up against, the project, what results we're looking for, and that they can bring their best to the meeting, to the table for the meeting. Talk about communication also. This is so important, is preparing the email, preparing the memo, whatever way you have of reaching, whether it's a tweet or posting something up on the website. And this really goes for if you're facilitating meetings also, but getting the information out to people so they can get it on their calendars, but also thinking about location and notifying in the communication what the location is. But think about where you want to hold things. You want places that are bright, comfortable space for all. If that's not where you're sitting right now, I apologize. But hopefully, if it's a virtual meeting, you can hear me clearly, you can see the materials, you've got what you need electronically at least. But if you're hosting someone at your workplace or hosting some type of workshop or meeting, make sure it's a place that's accessible to everyone, something that's central. Don't always have meetings, don't always have workshops at your own location. So it's thinking about these different things so you can draw in the group that you need at the meeting, or if it is at a workshop and you're facilitating. Again, we're going to start on time, end on time. I might sound a little bit like a broken record as we go through this, but make sure you have dates and times that work for most, and once that's set, be ready to roll when that 9:30 a.m. hits. Talk about being clear for the purpose again, making sure there's an agenda, send that ahead of time, ask for that review, and also share who to contact if some clarification is needed. So if I've put a challenge out on my agenda, I'm going to make sure you know you can contact me ahead of time if you want to discuss, if you have specific questions. So as people are thinking about things, you want them best prepared. Let's be sure there's a chance for them to clarify something rather than worry, why are we talking about staff cuts in staffing on the agenda. That may be worrisome if that shows up on your staff meeting and you haven't heard anything about this. So be sure that you're available as a chair and there's contact information and people can ask you questions ahead of time. Just a little hint with the communication around the meeting. So this is a terrible slide, I understand that, but these are some of the materials that we put together for Advisory Committee Meeting Planning Checklist. These are from the Strengthening Extension Advisory Leaders. The materials that we sent are posted on the Org Development course page for this webinar. If you look at this, I'm going to give you a chance to take a look. Let's take a full minute to read through if you haven't had a chance to do that ahead of time. And if you could just pull out one or two that you think are very important. I'm going to just pause right now and give you time to look at that. Take a full minute to read and reflect on this list and make some notes. Make some notes for yourself, and you can also tell us what items stand out for you. I'm going to be quiet. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to read through. Make some notes for yourself when you're thinking about meetings, and if there's something that stood out, feel free to put that right in the chat box. I see Tabitha sharing that appreciating when meetings, if you're in a regular meeting with a staff or with a team, a monthly meeting or quarterly, if you always know it's on the third Friday of the month, I appreciate that also. I think that's good. You can put that on your calendar. You can also try to avoid conflicts that come up on that day ahead of time if it hasn't been put on your calendar yet. So I think that's a great hint. Appreciate that. And then Holly's suggesting starting the meeting on time is important. Establish a date and time for the next meeting. How many people do that? Do you usually, with these regular ongoing, have those meetings set ahead of time, whether it's when you leave the meeting, you set another time, or have regular meetings? Curious if that's become kind of part of our culture, because I think it's hard to get people together, hard to get on people's schedule, and it's important to set that date. So appreciate that, Holly. And then the notice and reminder of the meeting, starting and ending on time and keeping on schedule. Another, Lynn finds that very important. definitely keeping on schedule, making sure that meeting is very productive. But then the notice and reminder, get that out ahead of time. Sometimes it's hard to schedule things ahead. And sometimes you've got to put it out there and see who can make that. But the notice and reminder, very important. Regular meetings, another, sounds like it's a pretty regular thing, regularly scheduled for the year. It's great if you can do that. And then having necessary supplies, following through. Yeah, that's not always something we think about, but you definitely want to be sure you're prepared. Sometimes when you're pulling together a meeting, you also have a presentation to do as part of that meeting. So making sure you've got all the handouts, if it's a face-to-face meeting or the electronic handouts. So following through is also another piece that Karen is sharing. Necessary supplies, following through, all really important things with those recommendations that have come up. And then best to have a consistent date and time, pretty popular. I like to establish times on the agenda as a guide for discussion to keep on time. So Mary, I find that's very useful, whether you put them on the agenda or have them on your own agenda. Making sure you give some time to at least explore an issue, and if you hit that time limit, we're going to talk a little bit about what we do then. So that's another good tip for putting an agenda together for sure. And then Corinne is checking in on action items from the last meeting. So taking those notes and making sure somebody's keeping those notes. We actually use SharePoint with one of our teams and try to we keep our agendas there, and then we can add to the agenda, the whole team can, and also we put some notes in afterwards. So we can go back and say, oh, here's some things, either they've worked out, if it's been a couple weeks and we've worked through some of the items, but there may be some things that we definitely want to address, and making sure we have a place to track all that. So I think SharePoint's a good way to do that. Not sure how you do that, Corinne, but definitely checking on action items from the last meeting. Sending out minutes with clear expectations so people have those. You have that in a file somewhere too, another way. And then clear communication, so helpful for those who missed the meeting. Sure, people can't always come, and there's very valuable reasons, valid reasons why not to, if somebody can attend. So if you have good minutes, that can really catch them, put them up to speed, and make sure you're looping them in to be effective too. So that's really great input. I appreciate it. And this is a nice list. So hopefully you've found this list on the course page for strategies for effective meetings. So I think these are just handy to pull out, refresh, and to share with others. Because it's not necessarily those of you who are on. You're probably very highly skilled meeting makers, but sometimes you can pull some ideas out that help to move things forward there. So next we're going to talk about when you first get a brand new group together and making sure you're establishing, and some of this we addressed already. This is the important decisions to get any committee started at the first meeting. Are there any examples of involving members? Have you done this? So if committees or group members are new to the organization, you want to consider a basic orientation to the organization's mission, vision and history, orientation to responsibilities of the position. This is a good example. There's a good example on the board toolbox of board orientation, and I know our state specialists have been working on that and have, I think, even an updated copy that we may be seeing later. You may want to contact if you're an executive director or leading or working closely with your board of directors, thinking about an orientation if you're bringing on some new members or if you have a brand new group. You definitely want to go through that orientation so that people do feel like they're grounded to the organization that's having that meeting. So here's some questions. How often are the meetings held? Have you thought about, do you need it quarterly? Could you get away with 2 meetings a year? Again, it depends on your meeting, so these are questions for you. Which day of the week is best? Which time of the day? I think those regular, let's meet every 3rd Friday is a very useful way to get on the calendar. So this is here. And then how do we notify members? Is email working? Right now we're using email when we promote webinars or meetings. We're also putting things on Yammer, so yammer.com. We actually have a Cornell Cooperative Extension group started there. So if you go to yammer.com, you can sign in. I see many of you are joining in, and that's another way for us to promote our professional development or meetings that are coming up or new staff orientation. So there may be some of those electronic, you can tweet. We also tweet. And the organizational team actually has a listing of tweets on their organizational page. Maybe you've seen that. So there's lots of ways to get the word out, and those regular meetings are probably a great key. So what are the roles of the leaders of the advisory committee, such as the chair as a secretary? You definitely want to go through that when you have a new group, going back to the slide, and who will take responsibility for those key leadership positions. So let's make sure people are informed, especially if they're volunteers. You want to be sure the staff and maybe volunteers who are longtime committee members of, say, an advisory committee, that they might add to that too. And also talking about what will the ground rules. So we started on the whiteboard a little bit before 9:30, playing around with some ground rules and using the whiteboard. But what might be the ground rules? I think it's important to take time to talk about what makes things comfortable for people that are at the meeting. We also want to think about making sure we're taking care of needs of people, that we're a welcoming organization. We've got some webinars coming up. In fact, on Friday, if you've got some time in the morning, there's Creating a Welcoming and Inclusive Climate. Eduardo Gonzalez, fantastic presenter, just back from Puerto Rico vacation. He'll be presenting Creating a Welcoming and Inclusive Climate. I know some of you have signed up for that already. Still time to register, but these are some of the things to think about as you're trying to really set up a regular meeting time, or just a one-time meeting, facilitate a nice atmosphere for all to attend. So just a few things to consider there. So we'll move on next to just giving a few agenda examples. I think they're not the only one that's out there. There's definitely other forms, and if you've got an agenda you like, is there a certain format you want to share with the group, please put that in the chat also. So I've added here, a formal advisory committee meeting agenda and also an informal. So this talks about a call the meeting to order, attendance. You may want to just do that looking at the form. You could do it, let's go around the table, have everybody introduce themselves, or maybe answer a question, tell a little story, have people share what made them smile today, those sort of things. So you can do that silently with a formal, or you can do a roll call if you prefer. You can look at the agenda and then also read and approve the preceding meeting minutes. Again, this looks at the action steps. That did we take care of those, or are there things we need to still take care of? What do we have to put on the agenda for today if we've missed that? You would go to the officer and standing committee reports, and then other special committee reports. Look at any unfinished business, old business, address the new, and then announcements. So if you've got an agenda that you, a source, feel free to share that, or if there's something else you like to build into your agenda. This is the non-formal advisory committee meeting agenda. What are we missing on here? Is there something you might add? A welcome, let's take a quick look at the agenda. We have some discussion topics. Again, you want to make sure it fits with the meeting that you're having. So take a look at that. Discussion topics can focus on progress reports for existing projects, planning, and assigning of roles. Again, we want to get things done. We also want to build those relationships, but we also want to think about the process as we're putting that together. So it's sort of that three-step process, but let's make sure the agenda reflects that. And then again, getting off to a good start, starting on time, introductions. These are things we've talked about a little. Who's going to take the minutes? Do we have a secretary? Do we have officers? That secretary of the meeting can also prepare the action plan. You know, what do we send out to people so that we are getting things done? Let's be clear at that purpose. Post the agenda ahead of time with times as recommended here, as somebody had suggested earlier, and then clarifying those ground rules and asking for additional rules from the group. So that's one way to do it. That's a pretty, I think, straightforward slide there. If anybody has anything to add. Feel free to add that as I click to the next slide. And I think what we'll do is go to the whiteboard, since we were actually able to click on that. And you should be able to click on the board and hit the T up there and type in some ground rules for our webinar. You probably would typically do that a little earlier in the session, but what are some of the ground rules that you might add if you were having a meeting or if you were part of a meeting? What makes you comfortable in a meeting? If we could just throw a few things up there. I think many of us have done this, and if not, it's a good thing to build in if you're the facilitator, again, of a workshop or of a meeting. What kind of ground rules would you expect? So this is the audience participation part. And I think if you click on the whiteboard and click on the letter, sometimes it takes a little bit, but we did test this. And put something up there that might be a ground rule that you would appreciate. We can space each other out. Let me know if this isn't working for you. But I'll give you a minute to think about some of the ground rules that you've seen that you might want to suggest. It will depend on the meeting for sure. I see a squiggly that looks like somebody's drawing. Or maybe it's a letter. If you want to type, you can hit the T up on the ribbon up at the top, and then you should be able to type right on the board. Or if you think you can do it with drawing, that works too. That could be a J. There we go. It's working. So trying out the tools. Ground rule. Silent cell phones. This is great. So we actually, I'm going to speak a little about this as you're, feel free to add in some other. So what do we do about technology? Do we ban technology? And in some of the earlier, when we were looking in 2011, when we updated in this presentation in 2013, really didn't see a lot about it. And I had was talking about this webinar with my brother-in-law, works for a big company. Actually, he's worked for several big companies, and he said they do a lot of conference calls. And quite often, it's very acceptable if they get called on and they're not paying attention because they're on their phone or on their email. It's very acceptable for them to to say, I'm sorry, I had to attend to an email that came up, which seemed a little silly to me, but that could be the case if you have an hour meeting. You can't wait till the end of the meeting. But it was funny to me that that was part of the culture. This is a big sales company. And then as I was reading through one of the most recent articles that I listed, the Harvard Business Review article that you'll find posted there, it talks about banning, asking people to silence their cell phones, not do email, because it's really hard for people to multitask, and you might feel that that's perfectly fine for you. You know that you can listen and also do email, but really research shows that the brain can't always handle all that, and you certainly don't get your best participation if you're working on something on the side. It also talked about how people feel like they're very capable, but when they find a leader in the group or a colleague in the group picking up their phone and looking at email while they're talking, that people are very offended by that. So I think it's good for the group to agree, are we going to set technology aside? Of course, you're going to consider if you're note-taking, you might want to use your computer as far as how to get notes, or sometimes I even actually take notes on my cell phone. And I do want to be very clear that it's just a note-taking thing. So I think people should just be aware as they're using technology, if they're checking their phone all the time. Of course, there's emergencies too, or maybe you're waiting to hear about, who knows, doctor results, that sort of thing. School being closed, something family related. There are some times that you may want to consider technology is okay, but that's a great one there. So see a few more coming in. Let people talk without interruption. I think that's really important. And I'd like to restate what others have said for clarity. So yeah, that's on the list too. So making sure that you're understanding what people are saying, especially if they're saying it a couple times in a row, they are not feeling heard. When you restate something, then it makes people understand that you understand what they're saying. for webinars, test the system before the actual webinar. It's not always foolproof, but it's definitely a great thing to do with webinars. And practice. Things are going to come up. I find my biggest challenges are whenever we do something a little different. So if we're using this speakerphone here, typically I'll call in from my office on the phone, plugging it in, testing speakers, also testing that it's the microphone that the webinar is using. So those are all really good tips. What else is coming in the chat? Ground rules: give all a chance to be heard, and use yes in statements versus negative statements, so keep things privately. And also, yep, so we are seeing that testing the system before the actual webinar on the board, so thank you for sharing that. Looks like it worked just fine. So appreciate that audience participation. Again, I know you've got the expertise. You've probably, I can't imagine the number of meetings we've all led or been part of. So thanks for tapping that in. And sometimes it's just sharing tips with others, what's original, what's new, but what are also good reminders to even starting on time isn't always a typical thing you see. So be respectful of others' backgrounds and perspectives. So we do definitely want to be respectful, and as we've learned through different presentations, especially with Eduardo Gonzalez's work, and again, I'll point to his webinars. We've got another webinar coming up end of January, Building Cross-Cultural Communication Skills. All of these are meant to sort of work together. So if you've got staff who are looking to beef up their meeting production, their effectiveness in their meetings, or even their facilitation in their workshops, these are some things you may want to point your colleagues to and look into for yourself. You know what you need as far as your professional development plans, but sometimes that cross-cultural communication skills is a way to help you be a little more respectful of perspectives that aren't definitely your own, and get out there and work with people and talk with people and understand where maybe you may be falling short on always having the same perspective. We definitely want that diversity in our work and in our minds too. So ask attendees if they're expecting an important phone call to mention this, and be sure to leave the meeting to take that call. I think that's great. Very respectful to do that if you've got something happening or you're watching for something. I think it takes some of that offensiveness off if people are feeling that or feeling like they're not heard. So appreciate that. We're going to go back to the slides. Another thing that I thought was interesting on this slide, the meeting grounds rules for success, is leave the disagreements at the meeting, because there can be some real contentious, whether it's a board meeting, an advisory meeting, maybe it's some controversial. We tend to get into some controversial issues working in our communities. Let's say that ahead of time. Let's leave the disagreements at the meeting. Let's make sure that we're building on our social capital, and we talk about this. So thanks for bringing those up on the whiteboard, and it's here on the slide too if you need that. And then creating an atmosphere for participation, setting the tone. Important to get things started, encouraging discussions. I think that's part of clarifying what you're hearing, turning questions back to the group, asking for comments, complementing ideas. The Division of Nutritional Sciences has a great facilitation workshop, and I think they're still doing it with nutrition educators. But they talk about complementing ideas, but not to go overboard with that, saying that's the best idea I heard yet, or the best idea I've heard ever, or that's really outstanding. Complimenting very sincerely, but making sure you're not making others feel slighted. So kind of getting in that role of, yes, I appreciate that comment, that's great, thank you, but not going over the top and making others feel like, oh, she didn't recognize my comment that way. So I think that's just something to add into that, encouraging discussion. Having these comments come out, you definitely are appreciating them, making it known that you're appreciating them, and building them into what's being talked about. Asking those open-ended questions then, and also engaging everyone in decisions. And then looking for those quiet members and moving the long-winded ones along. This is what the slide is saying, but paying attention that everyone's participating or has that opportunity to participate. Another thing I used to think about actually in this nutrition facilitation training, they talked about making that safe space and saying, we're not going to, call on you and make you participate. But when some of the other articles with meetings, they talked about social loafing. Have you heard of that before? Maybe I'll let you put that in the chat box. Have you heard of social loafing? And if so, if not, what do you think that social loafing might mean? And we'll talk a little bit about this in the slides to come forward. But to create that atmosphere of participation, I think you want to encourage those quiet members, and there may be different reasons they're quiet. Anybody have an idea what social loafing is? I think we'll have fun with this one. Definitely a good term and something to think about, and actually to think about also as you're participating in meetings. Are you socially loafing in this meeting because everyone's coming up with so many great ideas? Maybe they're saying what you're saying, but maybe there's a perspective that you could add also. Definitely not actively engaged. You might be paying attention, but you're definitely not sharing that. Being too casual, that's another good way to put it, and I think there's a lot of definitions for it. Piggybacking on others' ideas and statements work without the participation. So I think it's good to speak up and say that was a great idea. I really feel like that. I think it's important to build on that. If you have adding your perspective that social loafing is basically just sitting there because there's so many people in the meeting, so many ideas being brought, and I tend to be more of a listener than a talker, believe it or not. So I do internalize what's happening, and I may also hold back. Haven't thought of it as social loafing, but I'm definitely going to think about that a little different as I participate in meetings. So a tendency to observe rather than participate might be another definition of that, but that was in the Harvard Business Review article that we've posted. You can read more about it, and we'll talk a little bit as we come forward with that. Thank you very much. So again, facilitation, agree on a time limit. Limit each speaker's time might be another way to facilitate over talkers. If members are repeating statements, I think that, as we talked about, clarifying statements, but also, yes, you've been heard, we've got it, said this a couple times, you don't say that, but I'm hearing, you're feeling very strongly about whatever statement is your idea that we definitely want to build a horse ring outside. That's something we're going to have to talk further with the group, but we've got it that you're interested in having that horse ring be built on our property. So that's repeating the statement, restating, summarizing. And then you can also check this whole idea of if you're feeling like you're hearing a lot of the common things, you can stop and ask, are we beginning to hear consensus here with the group? If everyone's nodding and enthusiastic about the idea that's building, you can also pause and make sure that others are being helped. But if you've got a good feel and you have a pretty small group, you don't need to talk about all the pieces if people are starting to agree. And then if the group can't decide, suggest tabling an issue. So we talked about timing that agenda. When you get to the end of the time, we've decided 10 minutes, we're going to talk about the fundraiser, and we can't agree, let's either put it at the end of the meeting if we have some time at the end, or we're going to table this to the next meeting. And maybe it's asking someone to get some more information, or if you've got a big enough group, forming a committee to work on an issue. So I think that's pretty helpful too. Again, it prevents those board meetings from having to be 2-3 hours. If you can facilitate that, let's move on. We'll talk about it next time. Nobody wants to come to a meeting at 7 o'clock at night and leave at 10 or 11 at night. And I've heard of board meetings actually going that long. So think about that. We want people to come back. Let's facilitate best we can, keep things moving. You want to address and get done what you want to get done, but sometimes it needs a pause and we need to do some exploring. So keep that meeting moving forward. Another hint on facilitation there. So I think the next thing we'd like to do, is try a little role play if I have some volunteers. And I know I've got some comics out there, talented meeting makers, and wondering if there's anybody who's taken a look at the script. We can work through it. We can do it in a non-role play if we need to. But if there's anybody on there who's interested and has that handy, or has the staff page handy where I've posted on the org development website the strategic meetings, what would the group like to do? We could just take a look at the materials, or we can work through this. There's your chance to jump in and be a star for a day. Don't worry, it's recorded and will be posted for all time. Okay, I'm not hearing a big interest in jumping in. Of course, you're muted and you may be saying you want to do that, but if you want to put in the chat, we can do that. Otherwise, we can also just take a look at the script if you'd like to do that. I just think the idea of the meeting killer and the conflict causer is an important piece to go through. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. See if this works. And let's see, are you seeing now? I can bring the chat down. Are you seeing the course description, CCE Pro 116 Strategies for Effective Meetings? Are you able to see that? I'll be sure I'm showing the right screen. Okay, great. And then we'll pull up that. So this is on the staff website. This is on the org development and accountability page under professional development courses. It's course CC Pro 116. And we've developed this web page based on our framework for professional development. And this falls under the communications and leadership, or foundations in leadership, I think we call it, talking about effective meetings. So it's here. And I'm going to just open up the list of role play characters, and you can take a look at this. We'll just skim through. I also attached it to the email today if you want. But I just think this is a good way to think about the kind of characters you may want to populate your meeting with. You may want to talk to people ahead of time. You know, people are really great, whether they're in an official role as an officer, because sometimes the treasurer can also be the meeting maker, or if it's just somebody who's kind of your right-hand person or there to assist, maybe one of your team members looking out for you. So the meeting maker, I'm just going to run through these. If you really don't want to role play, but we could do it. So the meeting maker, and you can do this in person, but we're going to try it through webinar. The meeting maker's job is to get the meeting off to a good start, make the meeting successful for all the members and officers present. This person attends a lot of meetings, and most of them, they don't get all the time that they should because of the important role they play. They do all those things that make the meeting interesting and purposeful. For this reason, the meeting maker deserves quite a bit of time and attention. This person also sees that the meeting starts on time, everyone's welcome, the reports are made, the committees are appointed, and no one talks too much, and that everyone has the chance to participate in discussions. This meeting maker could also be the committee chair. It's really a role the committee chair could play, but it's also great to have a sidekick that might help with this too. So the meeting minder as a description would be more that business person has the agenda, has the bylaws, has the Roberts Rules of Order, keeps a close watch on events of the meeting, can be a real friend to the chair. So this is somebody who might not be the chair, but helping. It also may be, it's that person who knows Roberts Rules, knows the bylaws, dates for significant meetings, somebody, that detail person, has a calendar, has a copy of the agenda. People like to see this person at a meeting because they know that someone will be watchful and helpful with all parts of the meeting. I know in some of our professional development organizations, we appoint a parliamentarian at the meeting, and that person is really utilized to the full extent. Is this the way we proceed with this? And even though the chair is very familiar with that, the parliamentary and can bring that to the meeting. Let's be sure we're following it. No, we need to do a vote on that, or we don't need a vote on that because so this person's pretty informed and pretty detail-oriented. So it's a great one to have in your meeting, whether an official officer or, again, somebody who's looking out for the chair or looking out for the purpose of the meeting. Then the mover is also important and kind of works pretty closely with these two that we've just mentioned, keeps the meeting moving forward on task, on time, on the agenda. Happy if there's positive participation from the participants. This meeting mover may get frustrated. So again, this might be a mindset. Somebody coming into the meeting who likes to see things moving along, gets frustrated if the meeting's not focused, might get frustrated with the chair, but also is there to support the chair. They might start at the beginning of the meeting, and sometimes the meeting mover or the movement of the meeting does get pushed aside if there's negative characters that might attend the meeting. So just think about this in your meetings. You might be thinking about a specific group that you're working with now. Who are these people? If they tend to be very positive in helping things along, but also look out for that frustration and talk to them about it. Here's what I'd like to do differently, or do you have ideas to make this work better, to address these negative characters, to keep things moving. But they definitely want to team up with a meeting maker, and let's make sure this person has a meaningful role in the meetings when you're supporting all of your meeting movers. You don't necessarily just have one in the meeting. So I'm scrolling down. Hopefully you can see character 4, the conflict causer. You may have some of these. Let's think about it. If you can think of somebody who might be in one of your meetings that might be the conflict causer. They're always at the meeting. Sometimes no one attends because of the things this conflict causer does. It can really turn people away if there's someone who's constantly putting up roadblocks for the production of the meeting. Feel good when people get in arguments and have hard feelings. These are the people that you know that might maybe like to stir up trouble just for the interest of it. Or maybe they're truly focused on something and can't get over it. So they do tend to make things not productive in any other area. So the conflict causer would consider it a success when someone has a temper tantrum and storms out. They are silent when the meeting maker, the meeting mover, and the meeting minder are present and working together. So I think that's important. If you've got a good crew moving things forward, I know I've had committees where they've been the most positive people, and they've just shut down these conflict causers. Or I should say we did shut down the conflict causers just by being there as a team, thinking positively, addressing, let's move forward, being sure that their needs are met, and you're talking to them and dealing with what that underlying issue may be, maybe not right at the meeting, but before the meeting or at another time, following up with a phone call. Feels like there's something going on, how can I help? But you do want to address this, and we have had challenges where staff's production really has been hurt because there's a conflict causer, whether it's in a program or in a specific meeting. And as a supervisor, as a colleague, let's be sure that we're not letting our colleagues be pushed around by somebody who's a conflict causer, regardless of why it's happening. Let's be sure these are addressed and not stood for. So we do want to be sure we're looking out for them and addressing what's going on. And we have other webinars on that too. The Understanding Diverse Personalities, or really working with difficult people, is another one that we have recorded on the org development site, and we've offered here and there. It talks about different personalities, different ways people cause those conflicts or bring challenges to the meeting, or maybe they're just, have something against you and are out to get you as a chair of a meeting. But there's definitely ways to handle that and to be prepared to handle the conflict causer, which is very similar to the meeting killer. I'm scrolling up to character 5, the meeting killer, and that job is to kill a meeting, and this person can be very effective, can cause a meeting to go so far sidetracked that we run out of time before anything accomplished. So I think it's that awareness, looking out for these, can make other committee members get so frustrated that they don't come back, they don't talk, they shut down. if they're targeting people. So be sure we're not standing for that in our meetings. Be sure that people you're working with, your chairs, know that they can stand up to this conflict causer, this meeting killer. This is definitely detrimental to meetings. So that's just the list of some of these characters in the script. You can go back and read through the script to see how the meeting maker and meeting movers can definitely move a meeting along and looking for that. So not sure if that was helpful. I just like this list of meeting characters, especially built in with the script. If you want to run through that, we can do it, but I don't think it's useful for me just to do it on your own. I think it's good to look at these, and if you want to pull them out, try it out in a staff meeting. I welcome you to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to the slides. Any thoughts about the meeting? Are you thinking of anyone about the meeting characters? Is there somebody we're missing that you've encountered? If you can describe that person, what to do about, maybe the group can help you with that. So I'll let you put that in the chat. I'm sure you thought about something as we were going through that list. Did anyone come to mind? You don't have to name names, but maybe you have this one volunteer. Looks, Tabitha, do you have a question? Looks like you have a question there. Oh, I'll let you put that in the chat, Tabitha. Catherine, that's great. The social loafer should be added to that. I think that's a new term, but definitely the social loafer. So what do we do about them? Any ideas with the social loafer or any of the other challenges to meetings? This again is the group participation part, so I'll let you chat in the chat box. And Tabitha, I want to be sure that you can, looks like you have a question up there in the participant list. I want to be sure you're able to chat, or I can unmute you also, or maybe that's just from before. So someone in mind for each of these. So Catherine's got someone in mind for each of the characters. How about any tips, Catherine? What do you do about them, or have you addressed them, or what might you do in the future? Okay, Tabitha's good. The person who over-participates. Yes, Sarah, that's great. So what would you do with somebody who over-participates? Maybe hook them up with a social loafer? Looking for your tips here on how to handle these challenges. I know we've got some experienced educators on the line, so feel free to jump in. And no, that's great, Melinda. So person with big ideas for everyone else to do. Isn't that fantastic? So what do you do in that case? Looking for your solutions here. Person who feels they're being candid, but in fact they're being unnecessarily critical of another committee member. I think that's a really good point, Fiona. I think about that. You see that in everyday world also. And I think this is a case of, with the person who feels they're being candid, you can appreciate their bluntness, but I think it's important to also have a conversation where you talk to them about maybe something they don't know. So for that, if you're that person, and you wouldn't know because you think you're being blunt, it's having those experiences and also asking for feedback from people. But as the meeting facilitator, as the chairperson, I think it's important to go to that person and talk to them. I appreciate you have great ideas. You're bringing good things to the point, but it might, I think that it might be coming across a little bit strong. Maybe if you wanted to say this, you might structure it a little different way. So I think that's one of those side conversation pieces, and maybe a lot of these are. Catherine's looking for tips here, but she's going to pull the conflict causer aside after the meetings, try to constructively suggest other ways of participating. So I think that's important. Talking to people on the side, maybe not at the meeting. There may be some times where you do actually need to shut down some challenges or ask for a minute. You want to be as respectful as possible. You want to keep those relationships intact. Make sure people have a way to, protect their pride, so you're not shutting anyone down per se, but conversation on the side. Maybe it's summarizing some statements that are coming across, or maybe it sounds like you're frustrated. Here's what I'm hearing. You've got this great idea right here. Put it on the table. Neat way to name the role. Seems like depending upon the content or agenda of the meeting, folks might take on different roles. Definitely. It could be the same person with a few different roles. Corinne, thank you, including more of the challenging ones. So if someone's feeling left out or unseen, could be a good opportunity to acknowledge that, and the content can be tricky. Work with the stakeholders that you know well ahead of time. I really think that's important. So you know some of those people coming into meetings, if it's not a brand new meeting, or be sure you do. There's really value. Corinne, I think this brings up a good point of value in another webinar that we offer on creating teams, whether they're virtual or really large. There's really some value in people having positive history together, who have worked together, and we've got a lot of people in Extension who have been here for several years, who have really found their allies and the people they work well with. Two people that work well can really move a committee forward and help to address some of these challenges in the meeting. So that's a good, I really appreciate that thought. Are there tips for a facilitator to rein the meeting in without causing that person to be defensive? I think that's practice with communication. I think it's Sarah, I think it's pulling people aside. And I think it's that, as we go back to that facilitation slide we're on, repeating statements, summarizing thoughts, so people know that they're heard and also that they're getting points. But also, maybe it's giving them a project, so they're complaining about something not moving forward. Let's be sure you can give them a couple people to work on between now and the next meeting. So putting them in roles. And I'm sure other people have, I don't have all the answers, definitely, but I'm sure other people have tips for that. Tips for a facilitator to rein the meeting in without causing that person to be defensive. Always try to keep relationships intact as much as possible. Make sure people have a way to maintain the respect, but definitely address when there's challenges. So the parking lot and the bike rack idea, that's great. So I don't know if people are familiar with this, but whether it's a newsprint or a place where you can take great ideas that aren't necessarily on the agenda, set them aside. Let's revisit them at the end of the meeting. If we have time, or the end of the workshop. We put a newsprint quite often on the wall, and something that just doesn't quite fit in with our topic, but it's a great idea. Let's move it forward. We can put it there, go back and revisit that sidetrack for a future agenda. Great idea. Wonderful. Thank you. So just a few more slides here. We're going to move on to how to end the meeting and how to get results. And I really appreciate your participation in this. It really adds value to it. 3 more slides. One is of references. So how to end the meeting and get results. So you change your meeting to doings. You can actually call that if you want. It's a little weird, but change your meetings to doings. So let's be sure we're results focused, while also thinking about the social aspect, the building the relationships, and also the process of the meeting, so they are productive. You're going to assign tasks to people or to subgroups, and you're also going to assign deadlines. And quite often those deadlines might be the next meeting. So again, the regular meetings, we're going to meet quarterly. We know we want to get this report together. We can do it by email. We can set a date earlier. Or maybe it's everybody has their piece when we sit down and look at it together. Or maybe we all want to review what everyone's written before the next meeting. So then we can put it up for discussion. So assign the tasks to people, assign deadlines, make sure you're very clear about that. That's the value of those meeting minutes or notes. Evaluating the meeting. How did this go for you? And I mean that also to the group, thinking about evaluating the webinar, evaluating the meeting. Not real heavy-duty stuff, but a lot of great ideas, I think, came out, especially from you, all of you on the webinar. Evaluating the meeting, being sure that you end on time, and I'm hoping we could make this shorter than the 9:30 to 11, and it looks like we're on our track for that. So ending on time, or even a little early, because everybody could use an extra minute, a few minutes in their day. Being prompt with follow-up, so making sure you've got the resources you need Currently for this webinar, you know, everything's on the website, and if you're having any challenges, let me know about that. We can also email things, but everybody should be able to get on the STEP site now. If you're not in your office, you may need that virtual private network. But the resources are there for you, and there's a lot of other resources. The next slide is references. I'm sorry, 2 slides ahead. The last slide is some resources which have links that you can take a look into. If you have any problems with that, you can let me know. But let's be sure that people have the material that they want. Any other follow-up that's been promised. If you're looking for something, I can help with that, or have things posted somewhere so people can go and get the meeting minutes, the resources that might help carry the next project forward. And then providing the social interaction. So it's a little hard to do on webinars, except for chat in the beginning and the end, but also jumping on and sharing your humor with us. I appreciate those of you who did that. So build those relationships. Social interaction can be refreshments ahead of time or after. That social interaction time at the end of the meeting could also allow someone to scoot out if they really need to do that, but it also allows others to continue the conversation, or let's move into a meeting where we can just talk about the piece that we really need to follow through on. So building in that space, having refreshments afterwards, healthy refreshments preferably. There's always going to be those parking lot meetings too, and there's value in that for when, as people are going out to their cars and want to address something. So give those opportunities, make sure people are comfortable with each other, set those ground rules so that any kind of disagreement that's happening, let's be upfront about it in the meeting, and let's also leave it at the table, the disagreements at the table, but carry on the good work that the meeting's doing. Ending on a positive note also, making sure you're expressing appreciation to those people at the meeting, the people who led the meeting, all the great ideas that came in to the meeting, and then announcing the next meeting. So whether it's a regular one on the calendar, reminding people when it is, making sure that time's still going to work, or let's set a time so that we all know, can get it on our calendars, and at least those of us who are there can agree on a time that would work. So those are just a little checklist there on how to end meetings, get results. Again, not a great slide because of all the bullets, but pulled from those resources from Strengthening Extension Advisory Leaders. Any other comments about how to end meetings and get results? We'll have you share that. They move on to the next slide, but feel free to tap in. I can be pretty good at bouncing back and forth with different things. And again, this is still ending the meeting. Summary of the work completed. We talked about the importance of meetings. Did we have a goal? What were we hoping to get accomplished here? We certainly had a purpose for this webinar. We wanted to go through some of those resources. We wanted to explore ways to best prepare for a good meeting start, for high participation, and for getting results. And I'll ask you, did that happen? Do you feel like we looked at ways to get a good meeting started, to get high participation, to get some results in the meeting? Has this webinar been useful? You can respond to that, but also at the same time talking about, here's what we want to look back on. What else did we shoot for? Did we receive some useful tools? Did that happen here in this meeting? What was the purpose of the meeting, and did we address that? And let's spend some time talking about that in the meeting with those who attended the meeting, because as a chair of a meeting, I want you to come back. What was good about the meeting? What could use some improvement? Again, I'm opening out that to you. Are there useful things? We can cut this down. We want to make these some short little videos. Would that be useful? Would people look at them? So we talk about these video shorts and getting those. We have quite a few set up through program development. Celeste Carmichael is an expert at that. And we can definitely do that with some of these topics if they're going to be useful to you and your colleagues. So we could shorten some of this. We can pull out some segments. Maybe that's the way to do it, but I think it's also important, do you or do you not, I think it's important to get the ideas from the group. So feel free to chat in that. So let's evaluate the meeting. Let's look at the strengths. Let's look at the weaknesses. Let's improve on it next time we meet. And then we're going to adjourn at a good time, before the end of the time or at the end of the time, and then follow up with the minutes, the action items, if you have an actual meeting. So appreciate this. I'm going to look at just a hint. So we found some things helpful. Distributing, reviewing the action points that resulted from the meeting is another good point. Useful. Black up. So I know people don't always like role playing. We have in the past gotten some people to commit just by guilting them into it. But I think it's important. What I felt with the role play is looking at those, the meeting killers, the conflict causers, and making sure you understand the importance to have that whole piece in your meeting. And it's good to set things up. It's more than having the right room, having the right location. It's also having some people that are there to kind of watch your back as meeting chairs, support the effort, and also look out for sometimes those challenging personalities, but also understanding the challenging personalities that they're coming to us with passion can really contribute to the programs with the right champion. So appreciate that. Submit short examples of meeting challenge that we could address. I think that's a great idea, either through the chat or through the experience. Catherine did have a good question. Would have been interested in exploring that more, and thank you. So we definitely could get into some more challenge that were going on. Thank you, Corinne, for that input, and then helpful. Thank you. Great. So I'm going to wrap up. I think that's a great idea for next time. Role play activity help provide distinct titles to folks at the meeting. So now you can name them, and then you can address them. But I do want to really encourage, and I'm going to, you've got the list of resources there. I'm going to just click quickly to back to the website, and just to remind you, something you can do afterwards is look at some of the upcoming meetings and help to promote those. We don't need that. We'll go to the organizational development site. This is on the staff site, but this is the organizational development accountability site. So here are the tweets saying things that are coming up in the next month or so. We're working on our tweeting schedule. Under professional development are some of these schedules. If you click on any of these, you can get more description. So creating a welcoming, inclusive climate. So if you're working with any kind of group, creating a welcoming environment, building those cross-cultural communication skills, creating and implementing working agreements. Even the CCE is the County Campus Connections, so leadership and education through community gardens. This so ties in with our topic of engagement and communication, having effective meetings, really getting things done by understanding how to work with people. So any of these are great. I know many of you have registered for multiple, but encourage them, take my email, forward it on, get people to jump in. Eduardo is a fantastic presenter, so any of these are wonderful, wonderful webinars. And also the Leadership and Education Through Community Gardens involves Lori Brewer, another terrific colleague who always brings a great amount of practicality to anything she does with her professional development efforts, and we'll understand a little bit more about the Master Gardener Program, the Community Gardener Program, through the Campus County Connections on February 3rd. So take a look at those, forward them on. I'm going to click right back to the end. You know where to find all that, and you can always email me at kff2@cornell.edu. Thank you all, and have a great day. Appreciate it.